Story of Elijah. I should have seen the signs earlier. Natalie and I used to be so tight, inseparable, like two peas in a pod. We'd been married for 22 years, and most of that time was pure bliss. Sure, we had our ups and downs like any couple, but we always found a way to work through it together. But these past few months, it's like she's become a completely different person. The woman I fell in love with has been replaced by this cold, distant stranger. She's been irritable as hell, picking fights over the smallest things. And the intimacy? Forget about it. We might as well be roommates at this point. I've tried talking to her, trying to understand what's going on in that beautiful head of hers, but she just shuts me out. It's like she's built this impenetrable wall around herself, and I'm left on the outside, desperately clawing to get back in. Our friends have noticed the shift too. We used to be the life of the party, the couple everyone envied. Now, we can barely make it through a dinner without some passive-aggressive comment or icy silence. I don't know what happened to us, I really don't. But I can't keep living like this, walking on eggshells in my own damn house. That's why I finally bit the bullet and consulted a divorce attorney. Yeah, it's a tough pill to swallow after over 2 decades together, but I just don't see any other way out of this mess. I want to understand what the hell happened to us. Looking back, I think the catalyst for all this mess was the whole empty nest thing hitting Natalie harder than I realized. Don't get me wrong, I felt it too when Ethan and Isabel flew the co-op for college. Our little family dynamic shifted, and there was this weird void where our kids used to be. But Natalie? She took it to another level. She started acting all restless and dissatisfied, like the life we built together wasn't enough anymore. I tried suggesting we take up new hobbies or plan more date nights, but she always found an excuse to shut me down. That's when the real distance started creeping in between us. Nights of stony silence, barely making eye contact over the dinner table. Hell, I can't even remember the last time we were intimate, you know? It had been at least a couple years since we'd been physical. At first, I chalked it up to her going through some kind of midlife crisis or something. But then I started noticing little things, the extra attention to her appearance, the secret phone calls, the working late excuses. My gut was telling me something wasn't right. That's when my buddy Dominic dropped the bombshell on me. He'd seen Natalie having lunch with some younger guy, real slick-looking dude named Liam Donovan. A marketing exec at one of our rival software companies, if you can believe that. The betrayal hit me like a freight train, I'm not gonna lie. Here I was, busting my ass at the office to provide for my family, and my wife was carrying on with some smooth-talking pretty boy behind my back? It made me sick to my stomach. I followed her one weekend when she claimed she was going on a spa retreat with the girls. Turns out she was shacking up with Liam at some fancy boutique hotel downtown. Seeing them together with my own eyes, so cozy and intimate? That was the final nail in the coffin for our marriage. I contacted an old friend from the police force, had her serve Natalie with the divorce papers right there at the hotel. The look on her face when she realized I knew everything? Priceless. She tried calling me nonstop after that, but I wasn't about to give her the satisfaction. Enough was enough. After over 2 decades of partnership, of building a life and family together, she threw it all away for a cheap fling. I'm not an idiot. I know our intimacy issues played a role. But cheating? That's a line you don't uncross. So I'm doing what I have to do to protect myself and start overbuilding my life without her. The papers are filed, and there's no going back now. Is it gonna suck telling the kids their mom stepped out on me? You bet your ass it is. But they need to know the truth about why their family is breaking apart. I'm so damn disappointed, you know? Natalie was my soulmate, my forever partner. And she gave that all up for a fling with some younger guy who could never appreciate her like I did. In the end, her indiscretions cost us everything we'd built. I don't know what the future holds. But I do know this, I'm not going to let her betrayal drag me down. Once I get past the initial hurt and anger, I'm gonna pick myself up and move on. Maybe I'll find someone new who can love me the way I deserve. Or maybe I'll be alone for a while, focusing on my career and kids. Either way, one thing's for damn sure, Natalie Blackwood just became a permanent resident of my rearview mirror. I'm doing me from here on out. Story of Natalie. The boutique hotel's luxurious suite felt like a world away from my crumbling marriage back home. Liam's arms wrapped around me, our bodies tangled in the silk sheets, and for a few stolen moments, I allowed myself to bask in the thrill of this forbidden affair. "God, you're beautiful," he murmured, trailing kisses along my collarbone. A delicious shiver ran down my spine as his hands roamed my curves. Part of me felt alive in a way I hadn't experienced in years, desired, passionate, reckless even. But the guilt gnawed at my core, a relentless voice whispering that I was betraying the man I had vowed forever to. Elijah's face flickered in my mind, that warm smile and those piercing blue eyes that used to set my heart racing. I pushed the thoughts aside, burying my face in Liam's chest as we made love again. This weekend was my escape, my selfish indulgence before the harsh reality came crashing back down. Little did I know, that reality was about to burst through the door in the form of a stern-faced detective with a manila envelope in her hands. "Mrs. Blackwood?" she asked gruffly, eyeing the rumpled sheets and our state of undress. "I'm Detective Samantha Wilkins. You've been served." The words hit me like a sucker punch to the gut as she extended the envelope, divorce papers, plain as day with Elijah's signature glaring up at me. In that moment, the fantasy shattered, replaced by a cold, sinking feeling of dread. "Elijah," I choked out, frantically grabbing for my phone to call him. But it went straight to voicemail, that familiar baritone now laced with finality. "Please, you have to let me explain." The detective simply shrugged, her job done as she let herself out. Liam hovered uncertainly nearby, our passionate tryst now tainted by the weight of my shattered marriage. I spent the rest of that weekend in a panicked haze, calling Elijah's number until my fingers went numb from dialing. Voicemail after voicemail, pleading for him to hear me out, to give me a chance to make things right. But the silence on the other end stretched on, more deafening than I could have imagined. By the time I finally dragged myself home on Sunday evening, I felt numb. Broken. The house we'd built our life in together now felt like a hollow shell without his presence. I crawled into bed, clutching his pillow and inhaling his lingering scent as the sobs racked my body. The drive back into town should have been a blur, but I found myself gripping the wheel with white knuckles, foot leaden on the gas pedal. Red and blue lights flashed in my rearview mirror. I'd been speeding, of course. Fumbling for my license and registration with shaking hands, I could feel the officer's eyes narrowing at the crumpled divorce papers on the passenger seat. "Everything okay, ma'am?" His tone made it clear he already suspected the answer. I crumbled then, harsh, ugly sobs spilling out as I confessed everything, the affair, the shattered vows, my desperate attempts to reach my soon-to-be ex-husband. The officer's expression remained impassive as I bared the shattered pieces of my once idyllic life. With a curt nod, he sent me on my way with a warning, leaving me alone to navigate the wreckage of my own making. As the weight of Elijah's absence became a constant ache, I reached out to our children in a last-ditch effort to plead my case. But Ethan's icy silence over the phone spoke volumes. He blamed me for the carnage I'd caused our family, and I couldn't fault him for it. Isabel, my sweet, tender-hearted girl, was at least willing to meet for coffee and hear me out. Her eyes brimmed with unshed tears as I laid everything bare, my selfishness and the irreparable damage I'd inflicted on our once unshakable family unit. "Mom, you have to try to fix this," she implored, gripping my hand tightly. "Dad loves you, I know he does. If you show him how sorry you are, how committed you are to rebuilding." But even as the words left her lips, I could see the doubt flickering in her eyes. She wanted so desperately to believe in the fairy tale image of her parents, and I had shattered that illusion into pieces. In the end, it was Elijah himself who reached out to our children first. He gathered them each for a private conversation, one I wasn't privy to, and broke the earth-shattering news of our divorce himself. I could only imagine how it went: Ethan's stunned disbelief and anger, Isabel's pleas for us to reconsider and seek counseling. Their father, the steady, upstanding man they'd looked up to for their entire lives, forced to confess that the woman he'd sworn to cherish had thrown it all away for tawdry fling. The man I had once known better than anyone else in this world was now a stranger. And as the distance between us stretched into an endless, lonely chasm, I knew there was no going back from the path of devastation I had chosen. Story of Elijah. I couldn't stay in that house a minute longer, not with the ghost of our broken marriage haunting every corner. The air felt thick, suffocating, like I was being crushed under the weight of Natalie's betrayal. So I did the only thing I could. I packed a bag and got the hell out of there. Grabbing my essentials and the divorce papers, still crisp from the envelope, I took one last glance around our bedroom. Memories flickered in the corners of my mind, mornings spent tangled in the sheets, lazy Sundays with the sun filtering through the curtains. But those images were tainted now, the intimacy poisoned by the bitter truth of her infidelity. With a heavy sigh, I shouldered my bag and headed for the door. The house felt cavernous, hollow without her presence. Part of me had hoped she might be there, that we could have one final conversation as husband and wife before it all went up in flames. But her car was gone from the driveway, and an eerie silence hung in the air. Maybe it was for the best. I needed space, needed to process this gut-wrenching reality on my own terms before facing her again. So I fired off a quick text to the kids, letting them know I'd be staying at a hotel for a few days to clear my head. Then I peeled out of the driveway, leaving it all behind in a cloud of exhaust and churned up gravel. The drive did little to settle my racing thoughts. Memories and questions swirled in my mind like a tempest. When had things gone so wrong between us? How could the woman I trusted above all others shatter that bond so callously? Gripping the wheel, I wrestled with the anger, the hurt, the soul-deep sense of loss that threatened to consume me. By the time I reached the hotel, I felt numb, like I'd been hollowed out from the inside. I could only go through the motions, checking in, dumping my bag in the sparse but serviceable room, splashing some water on my face in the bathroom. Everywhere I looked, I saw ghosts of the life I thought I had, the forever that had crumbled to dust at my feet. It was only when I collapsed onto the stiff mattress, jacket and shoes still on, that the dam finally broke. I'm not ashamed to admit I cried, harsh, racking sobs that shook my body until there were no tears left. All the anger, the hurt, the confusion, it poured out of me until I was spent, a hollowed-out husk of the man I used to be. When the storm finally passed, leaving me drained and hollow, I realized I needed to call the kids. They deserved to hear it from me, as painful as it would be. So I pulled myself together, mustering what tattered shreds of composure I had left, and dialed Ethan's number first. The call connected, and for a beat, I could only listen to the faint crackle of the line. Then Ethan's warm baritone filtered through, instantly recognizable. "Hey Dad, what's up?" I took a steadying breath, fighting against the lump reforming in my throat. "Hey sport. Listen, I've got some tough news to share with you." There was a pregnant pause, and I could practically see the furrow forming between his brows. "What's going on? Is everything okay?" Another shuddering inhale. "It's about me and your mom." The words felt like shards of glass in my mouth. We're getting divorced, son." The silence on the other end was deafening. I could envision the shock washing over Ethan's face, the dismay as his world shifted on its axis. When he finally spoke, his voice was hushed, fragile. "What? But how? I mean, you two have been together forever." My free hand clenched into a fist, nails biting into my palm. "Your mom, not she, she had an affair. With another man." The truth was bitter ashes on my tongue. Ethan's sharp inhale was audible. "Mom cheated? Seriously?" The hurt, the disbelief in his tone cut me deeply. I can't believe this." "Are you sure, Dad?" "Yeah, I'm sure." I pinched the bridge of my nose, squeezing my eyes shut against the fresh onslaught of pain. "I caught her red-handed at a hotel with the guy. That's why I'm not at home right now. I can't even look at her after what she did." There was a pregnant pause, the weight of it all hanging heavy between us. Finally, Ethan exhaled a shaky breath. "Shit, Dad. I'm so sorry, man. I don't even know what to say." The rawness in his voice mirrored the jagged wound in my chest. "Are you okay?" "I mean, obviously not, but I'm hanging in there, kiddo." The lie tasted like ash, but I couldn't burden him further. "It's gonna be tough for a while, but we'll get through this. As a family." "Yeah, of course." There was a steely resolve in his tone now, the protective instincts of a son kicking in. "Whatever you need from me, Dad. I'm here for you, 100%. A lump formed in my throat anew at his words, and I had to swallow hard before I could respond. "Thanks, Ethan. That means everything, you know? I love you, son. Love you too, Dad. We'll get through this, I promise." As I hung up the call, fresh tears pricked at the corners of my eyes, but this time they were tinged with a profound sense of gratitude. My son, my flesh and blood, was in my corner through this nightmare. It was a lifeline to cling to when the waters threatened to pull me under again. With Ethan's support buoying my spirits, I knew I had to call Isabel next. My baby girl, so tender-hearted and hopeful, she wouldn't take the news well, but she deserved to hear it straight from me. When she picked up, her warm, melodic voice instantly conjured up a lifetime of cherished memories. "Hi, Daddy. I was just about to call you. I had the weirdest feeling." My heart twisted in my chest. "Hey, sweet pea." I paused, steeling myself. "Listen, there's something I need to tell you." I could hear the frown in her tone as her intuition kicked in. "What's wrong? You sound upset." Drawing a fortifying breath, I finally let the words tumble out in a pained rush. "It's about me and your mom. We're getting divorced, honey. I'm so sorry." There was a sharp inhale, a strangled sound of dismay. "What? No, Daddy, that can't. No, you can't be serious." The anguish in her voice damn near broke me. "I am, baby girl. I wish to God I wasn't, but your mom, she cheated on me. With another man." The words seemed to hang in the air, heavy and damning. When Isabel spoke again, her voice was choked with unshed tears. "No, Mom wouldn't do that. She loves you, I know she does. There has to be some kind of misunderstanding." Hearing her denial, her desperate need to cling to the reality she'd known, twisted the knife deeper. I wished, more than anything, that I could soften the blow, but she deserved the unvarnished truth. "There's no misunderstanding, Izzy," I said gently but firmly. "I saw them together with my own eyes. At a hotel, being intimate." The word felt vulgar, tainted. "Your mom cheated, and I can't get past that, honey. I've already filed the divorce papers." There was a beat of stunned silence before her composure shattered with a harsh, racking sob. The sound cut straight to my soul, a father's instinct to protect his child warring with the brutal reality I was forced to dole out. "Oh, Daddy, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." The anguish in her voice was a physical ache in my chest. "Please, you have to try to work it out. You two belong together, I know you do." I sighed, feeling drained to the bone. As much as I wished I could grant her that, to preserve her illusions, I knew it was too late. "I wish I could, baby. Believe me, I do. But your mom broke my trust in a way I can't come back from. I've got to do what's best for me now, as hard as that is." Another broken sob filtered through the line, the sound twisting the knife deeper. "But we're a family. You two are supposed to be together forever." My throat felt ravaged, scoured raw from the inside out. "I know, sweet pea. And I wanted that forever, more than anything. But your mom, she threw that all away." We talked a while longer, Isabel pleading through her tears for me to reconsider, to fight for our family. But I could only reiterate what she didn't want to hear, that the marriage was over, no matter how devastating that truth was. By the time I hung up, drained and hollow, I could barely muster the energy to move from the edge of the bed. My kids, my own flesh and blood, were shattered by the news I'd been forced to deliver. And their mother, the woman who had inflicted this wound on our family, was out there somewhere oblivious to the fallout. Or maybe she wasn't so oblivious after all. As if on cue, my phone began ringing shrilly, Natalie's number flashing on the screen like a harbinger of fresh torment. I watched it ring, feeling bitterness and rage curdling in my gut, before silencing the call with a vicious stab of my thumb. She tried texting me too, a barrage of messages pleading for me to answer, to talk to her, to let her explain. I read each one, my jaw clenched so tightly I could feel the tendons straining. But I stayed silent, letting her frantic words dissipate into the ether, unanswered and ignored. Then the calls started coming in from the kids' numbers, one after the other. I could only assume Natalie was working every angle, trying to get them in her corner as the battle lines were drawn. Well, she was out of luck there. Ethan had made his stance clear, and Isabel, bless her heart, was too good a soul to be swayed by her mother's crocodile tears. As the barrage continued into the night, I finally turned my phone off altogether, shutting out the outside world and its incessant demands. In that Spartan hotel room, cocooned in the dimness and silence, I was finally able to find some semblance of peace. It was short-lived, of course. The real world waited just beyond that flimsy barrier, full of harsh truths and gut-wrenching decisions still to come. But for those few stolen hours, I was able to simply exist, to let the jagged pieces of my broken heart lie where they fell as I drifted in and out of an exhausted slumber. Tomorrow would come soon enough, with all its complications and recriminations and battles to wage. But tonight, at least, I could be still, a man adrift in the wreckage of his former life as he steeled himself for the long road ahead. I pulled into the driveway, my heart pounding a staccato rhythm against my ribcage. The house loomed before me, its familiar lines and angles now tainted by the bitter knowledge of Natalie's betrayal. Still, I steeled myself and climbed out of the car, determined to face her head-on. She must have heard me arrive, because the front door swung open before I could even reach for the handle. There she stood, looking uncharacteristically disheveled, her eyes rimmed with smudged makeup and dark circles. "Elijah," she breathed, taking a tentative step forward. "Thank God you're here. We need to talk about this, please just hear me out." I held up a hand, cutting off her pleading tones. "I'm not here for a heart-to-heart, Natalie. I just want some damn answers." Her shoulders slumped, that familiar defeated posture I'd seen so many times before when she knew she was in the wrong. I don't know what to say, except I'm so incredibly sorry. You have to believe me, this wasn't some fling, some meaningless tryst. The anger flared hot in my chest, burning away any remnants of sympathy or affection. "Save it," I bit out, my voice like gravel. "Just answer me this, were you sleeping with him? That marketing guy, Liam Donovan?" She flinched as if I'd struck her, but gave a tiny, miserable nod. Yes, I was intimate with Liam. But Elijah, it was more than just physical, we had a real connection." "A connection?" I barked out a harsh, incredulous laugh, raking my hands through my hair. "Are you kidding me right now, Natalie? You threw away over 2 decades of marriage, of building a life together, for some cheap thrill with a younger guy who could never appreciate you like I did." Tears spilled over her lashes, tracking dark lines down her cheeks. "It wasn't like that, I swear. Things between us have been so broken for so long, and with Liam, I don't know, I just felt alive again in a way I haven't for years. Like the old me was waking up after being dormant for ages." I shook my head slowly, feeling the last threads of compassion fraying under the weight of her excuses. "I don't give a damn how alive you felt, Natalie. You made a vow, to me and to our family, and you shattered it into pieces without a second thought." Her lower lip trembled, but I pressed on, relentless. "I wanted forever with you, baby. I would have done anything, moved heaven and earth, to make you happy again. But you didn't even give me a chance. You just decided our marriage was expendable and went off chasing some cheap high with another man." The words hung heavy between us, laden with pain and finality. Natalie opened her mouth, but I cut her off with a curt wave of my hand. "Save it. I'm done, Natalie. I want a divorce, and I want it done as quickly and cleanly as possible. Get yourself a lawyer and let's just rip off this Band-Aid, for all our sakes." Her face crumpled then, anguish etching lines around her mouth and eyes as fresh sobs racked her body. "Elijah, please don't do this. I still love you, so much, we can fix this if you'll just let me." But I was already turning away, unable to look at her a moment longer without feeling my resolve crumbling. As I reached the front door, her voice trailed after me, a broken whisper. "I'm sorry, Elijah. I'm so sorry." I didn't respond, just let the door slam shut behind me as I strode back to my car, shoulders squared against the maelstrom of emotion threatening to pull me under. It was done, the decision made, the words spoken aloud and solidifying into reality. As I peeled out of the driveway, I could see Natalie crumpled against the doorframe in the rearview mirror, her body racked with sobs. A tiny flicker of pity tried to take root in my chest, but I ruthlessly snuffed it out. She had made her choices, and now we both had to live with the consequences. By the time I reached my hotel room, I felt numb, drained of any remaining emotional reserves. I collapsed onto the bed, staring sightlessly at the water-stained ceiling as the weight of it all threatened to crush me. My chest felt hollowed out, a gaping void where my heart and hopes used to reside. Eventually, the buzzing of my phone roused me from my stupor. A glance at the screen showed Isabel's number flashing insistently. With a weary sigh, I connected the call, bracing myself for another onslaught of anguish. "Dad?" Her voice was small, fragile. "I just got a call from Mom. She told me everything." A lump formed in my throat, choking off any words. I could only imagine the torrent of grief and desperation Natalie must have unleashed on our daughter. "Oh, Daddy," Isabel whispered, her voice thick with unshed tears. "I'm so sorry this is happening. Have you really decided to go through with the divorce?" "Yeah, baby girl," I managed roughly. I can't see any other way forward after what she did. The trust is gone, everything we built is tainted." There was a pause, a soft sniffle filtering through the line. "Mom says she wants to try counseling. To see if you two can work through this, rebuild what you've lost." Her voice took on a pleading tone. "Maybe if you just gave it a chance, opened your mind a little." I shook my head, even though she couldn't see it. "I don't know if I can, Izzy. What she did, it cut me so damn deep, you know? I'm trying like hell to understand, to find some way to move past her betrayal, but I'm just not sure I have it in me." Another pause, longer this time. When she spoke again, her words were carefully measured, as if she was testing the waters. "I'm not making excuses for her actions, Dad. What she did was inexcusable, and she's going to have to live with the consequences. But don't you owe it to yourself, to your marriage, to at least try? To explore every possible avenue before calling it quits for good?" Her reasoning struck a chord, prodding at the tiny ember of hope I was so desperately trying to smother. As much as my pride and ego raged against the notion, a small, rational part of me knew she might be right. With a soul-deep weariness, I sank back against the flat hotel pillows. "I don't know, baby. I really don't. All I know is, right now, the thought of even looking at her tears me apart inside." "I know, Daddy." Her voice was gentle, soothing. Just promise me you'll think about it, okay? Don't shut the door completely until you've explored every last chance of making this work." I was silent for a beat, feeling the jagged shards of my broken heart grinding against my ribcage. Finally, I managed a strained, "I'll think about it, Izzy." That's all I can promise right now. It seemed to satisfy her, at least for the moment. After a few more hushed words and a murmured, "I love you," the call disconnected, leaving me alone with the deafening silence and my own tortured thoughts. As the night stretched on in that impersonal hotel room, my mind cycled through the same anguished loops, the searing pain of Natalie's betrayal, quickly overshadowed by the desperate yearning to find a way, any way, to rebuild the life I had treasured. It was a vicious spiral of opposing impulses, leaving me battered and raw. When the first pale rays of dawn began filtering through the curtains, I finally admitted defeat and gave up on the pursuit of sleep. I rose, splashed some water on my face, and stared at my haggard reflection in the mirror. The man staring back at me looked like a complete stranger, exhausted, haunted, a shell of his former self. With a ragged sigh, I turned away from the mirror and began to get dressed. As much as I longed to stay holed up in this safe haven, reality was calling. I had decisions to make, paths to forge, regardless of how daunting the journey ahead appeared. One thing was certain as I strapped on my wristwatch and straightened my tie: I was a long way from finding peace and resolution. But for the sake of my own sanity, my kids, and those tattered remnants of the life I once knew, I had to keep putting one foot in front of the other. If I didn't, the darkness threatened to swallow me whole. After that gut-wrenching confrontation with Natalie, I knew there was no point in dragging this out any longer. The trust was shattered beyond repair, the intimacy just a faded memory. So I made the call to my lawyer, Marty Feldman, and scheduled a meeting to get this divorce rolling. Marty's a gruff, no-nonsense kind of guy, but he's been in my corner through thick and thin over the years. When I laid it all out for him, Natalie's affair, the damning evidence, my decision to end the marriage, he didn't even blink. Open and shut case of adultery, Eli, he said matter-of-factly, already scribbling notes. With proof of her infidelity, we've got a strong position for an adulterous divorce proceeding. It was almost too clinical, too neat and tidy a way to dismantle over 2 decades of partnership. But I appreciated Marty's pragmatic approach, his refusal to dwell on the emotional carnage. With a few deft strokes of his pen, the process was set in motion to officially, legally untangle the knot of my failed marriage. As I headed out of his office, shoulders feeling just a touch lighter, my phone buzzed with a text from my old buddy Dominic. "Hey man, tough times I heard. Why don't you get away for a few days, clear your head? Fishing trip up to Lake Winnisook, just the guys, plenty of beer and bullshitting. What do you say?" I couldn't help but crack a wry smile. Dominic's been trying to get me out on that damn fishing trip for years, ever since his dad's old cabin came into his possession. Normally, I'd beg off, way too busy with work, family obligations, blah blah blah. But now, a few days in the wilderness, putting some serious distance between me and this whole mess, sounded downright heavenly. I shot him back a reply, "You're on, brother. Could use a break from reality for a bit. At least I'd have something to look forward to amid all this upheaval. A chance to recharge, recenter, and figure out my next moves while enjoying some cold brews and bad jokes with one of my oldest friends." It was a tiny flicker of light at the end of this long, dark tunnel. While I was making plans to escape, Natalie was left to navigate the fallout from her shattered affair all on her own. From what I heard through the grapevine, it wasn't going too well for her on that front either. Word had gotten around the office about her indiscretions with Liam Donovan, that sleazeball from our rival software firm. I'm still not sure how the story leaked, but you know how it is with office gossip. It spreads like wildfire, everyone whispering behind cupped hands. Apparently, Natalie's coworkers weren't too impressed with her extracurricular activities. The sideways glances, the hushed comments as she walked by, the overall chill in the air, it all made for a pretty miserable work environment from what I heard. Can't say I had much sympathy, though. She made her bed, might as well lie in it for a while. To top it all off, I got a frantic call from Liam himself one afternoon, rambling like a madman about how I'd gone after his company, out of some twisted revenge plot. Raving about contracts getting pulled, employees getting laid off, the whole 9 yards. I almost laughed in the bastard's face. As if I'd go to those lengths, risk my entire professional reputation, all for some petty payback scheme. Liam clearly didn't know me at all if he thought I'd jeopardize my career, my life's work, over a broken marriage. No, this reeked of Dominic's handiwork. My buddy's never been one to let slights go unanswered, especially when it involves his crew getting disrespected. He must have put that protective streak into overdrive when he heard about Natalie's affair, decided to send a message to her little boy toy. I didn't have the heart to disabuse Liam of the notion, though. Let the prick sweat it out, stew in his own juices and self-made misery for a while. He'd gotten what he deserved for messing with another man's wife. In the end, Natalie was left holding the tattered pieces of her old life, the collateral damage of her reckless indiscretion. I almost felt a flicker of pity for her, almost. She was the architect of this whole disaster, after all. Maybe watching it all crumble around her would be the wake-up call she needed. Or maybe she'd just dig herself deeper into the hole she created. Only time would tell on that front. As for me, I was just focused on putting one foot in front of the other, making my way through this minefield one careful step at a time. The cabin trip with Dominic was my light at the end of the tunnel, a chance to hit pause on all this chaos, if only for a few blessed days. With any luck, I'd return refreshed and ready to tackle the next hurdles this divorce would inevitably throw my way. Either way, I was done letting Natalie's mistakes weigh me down any longer. This was my chance to start rebuilding my life without her, and I wasn't about to waste a single second of it. The Monday before Thanksgiving, Natalie approached me in the parking lot after I finished up at the office. I could see the desperation etched on her face as she hurried over, clutching her purse tightly. Elijah, wait. She called out, her voice strained. I need to talk to you, please. I paused, letting out a weary sigh as she drew closer. After our last explosive confrontation, I figured she'd get the message loud and clear. Our marriage was over, finished, kaput. But I should have known Natalie wouldn't go down without a fight. What is it, Natalie? I asked flatly, making no effort to mask my irritation. She took a deep breath, squaring those slim shoulders like she was bracing for impact. I wanted to ask if you'd reconsider coming to Thanksgiving dinner this week. With me and the kids. I barked out a harsh laugh before I could stop myself. You're joking, right? After everything that's gone down, you seriously think I'd want to play happy families for a damn holiday meal? Desperation flickered in her eyes as she reached out, grasping my arm. Elijah, please. The kids were so looking forward to us all being together, like we used to. And I know I don't deserve it, but I'm begging you to give me one last chance. Let me show you how committed I am to making things right between us. Shaking my head grimly, I pulled my arm free from her grasp. There's no making things right here, Nat. Not after what you did, throwing away over 2 decades of marriage for some cheap fling. I'm done, we're done, and that's the end of it. Tears welled up in her eyes, but I was past the point of letting them sway me. Get it through your head, our marriage is over. The sooner you accept that and get yourself a lawyer, the easier this'll be on both of us. With that, I turned on my heel and strode away, leaving her standing there with those defiant tears streaking her cheeks. I felt a pang of regret, a flicker of the tenderness I'd once felt for her. But it was quickly extinguished by the memory of her betrayal, burned away by the image of her tangled up with that smarmy bastard Liam. No, I was doing the right thing by cutting ties completely. Lingering any longer would only prolong the agony for both of us. As if the universe wanted to drive that point home, I got called into my boss's office a couple days later with some troubling news. Apparently, our company had just lost a huge contract, a multi-million-dollar deal with one of our biggest software clients on the West Coast. I don't understand, we were a shoe-in for this renewal, I protested, feeling a knot of dread tightening in my gut. What the hell happened? My boss, Randall, leveled me with a grim look over his steepled fingers. Word on the street is someone from a rival firm caught wind of your personal situation, Elijah. And they may have insinuated that our company's leadership was unstable, unprofessional. It took me a second to put the pieces together, but when I did, a surge of white-hot rage rushed through me. That sniveling coward Liam must have run his mouth, trying to sabotage my career out of some twisted sense of revenge for the collapse of his affair with Natalie. Randall must have seen the fury blazing in my eyes, because he quickly held up a placating hand. Now, I'm not accusing anyone of anything here. All I know is we lost the deal, which is going to mean some adjustments around here in the short term. My jaw clenched as I processed his careful words. Adjustments could only mean one thing: layoffs, budget cuts, every corporation's knee-jerk response when the money stopped flowing in as freely. Sure enough, by the end of the week, the other shoe dropped in spectacularly disastrous fashion. A company-wide memo announced that our hours were being slashed to 32 per week, effective immediately, until we could stabilize operations in the wake of the lost contract. I could only sit at my desk, seething in impotent rage as the whispers and sidelong glances started up around me. Everyone knew the real story, even if they didn't have all the sordid details. The boss's wife sleeping around had cost us all a hefty chunk of our paychecks. I could practically hear the vicious gossip swirling, Natalie's name uttered like a curse on every third set of lips. When I pulled into the driveway that evening, I noticed Natalie's car was already there. Of course she'd be home. Thanks to the shit show her infidelity had kicked off, she was working a glorified part-time schedule just like the rest of us schmucks now. Sure enough, she came bursting out of the front door like a woman possessed the second I killed the engine, eyes blazing with a mixture of fury and desperation. "You son of a bitch!" she shouted, her voice edged with hysteria as she stalked towards me. "What did you do, Elijah? What kind of sick game are you playing at?" I blinked at her, utterly baffled by the venom in her tone. "What the hell are you talking about, Nat? I'm the one who just got financially reamed thanks to you and your boy toy messing where you shouldn't have. She drew up short, those wild eyes boring into me with an unsettling intensity. Don't play dumb with me, she hissed, lips curling back in a snarl. This was you, getting revenge by sabotaging my company. Well, it worked. Half the marketing team is getting laid off because we lost our biggest client. The sheer absurdity of her accusation struck me like a physical blow, forcing out a harsh bark of laughter. Are you kidding me right now? You honestly think I'd put my career, my reputation on the line to get some twisted payback? I shook my head in disgust. Maybe you don't know me at all, Natalie. For a long moment, she simply stared at me, chest heaving like she'd run a marathon. Then, finally, some of the wild fire seemed to go out of her eyes, leaving them dull and hollow. You're right, she said, her voice suddenly small and defeated. I don't know you anymore, Elijah. I ruined everything we had. With that, she turned and trudged back towards the house, her shoulders slumped in abject misery. Part of me wanted to call out to her, to offer, what? Comfort? Understanding? But I held my tongue, watching in silence as she disappeared back inside, alone with the wreckage of the life she had destroyed. I realized then, with a sickening lurch, that her reckless actions weren't just tearing our family apart. They were sending out shockwaves into the professional world too, upending careers and reputations and financial security for who knew how many innocent people. All because she couldn't keep it in her pants and respect the vows she'd made to me, to us. The weight of that revelation felt like a lead weight pressing down on my chest. How could one person's selfish choices create such catastrophic ripples, decimating everything in their wake? I had no idea, but I was quickly becoming a casualty of the carnage, whether I liked it or not. By the time Thanksgiving Day rolled around, the tension blanketing our household was thicker than the gravy Natalie whipped up for the turkey. The kids were home from college, but there was no festive cheer, no joyful reunion after months apart. Instead, we all walked on eggshells, exchanging stilted pleasantries and avoiding one another's eyes. Ethan, bless his heart, tried valiantly to keep the mood light over our meager dinner. He regaled us with stories from campus life, the latest fraternity hijinks and study group escapades. But it was like his cheerful words hit an invisible barrier of awkwardness, unable to penetrate the pall that had descended over our formerly happy family unit. Eventually, the conversation shifted in a more somber direction, as if we were all inevitably drawn to confront the elephant in the room that none of us could ignore. It was Isabel who finally broached the subject, her eyes rimmed with unshed tears as she looked between Natalie and me. I just don't understand, she said, her voice catching in her throat. How could you throw everything away like this, Mom? After all the years, all the love and memories we shared? Natalie flinched, hunching her shoulders as if bracing for a physical blow. I don't have any excuses, sweetheart. I made a horrible mistake, one I'll regret for the rest of my life. But why? Ethan cut in, an uncharacteristic hardness edging his tone. Why would you ever do something like that to Dad, to our family? He worshipped the ground you walked on, and you just, what? Got bored and decided to trade it all in for a fling? His words hung in the air, harsh and accusatory. Natalie opened her mouth, then seemed to think better of it, clamping her lips together in a tight line. The silence stretched out, suffocating and oppressive, until an unexpected voice shattered it. Because that's what love is. We all turned, stunned, to the source of the quiet declaration. It was Sophia, Ethan's girlfriend, her eyes shining with a strange, serene conviction. Love isn't just a feeling or a fleeting moment of passion, she continued, her voice gaining strength. It's a choice you make every single day to cherish and nurture and fight for the person you've committed yourself to. When that choice becomes too hard, people, they stray. They seek out an easier path, one that doesn't ask them to work quite so hard. Ethan frowned, looking distinctly uncomfortable. Soph, I don't think that's. But she pressed on, undeterred. Your mom made a choice, Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood. A terrible, selfish choice that's brought incredible pain to this family. But that doesn't negate all the love and joy that came before it, does it? The decades of choosing each other, day after day? Her words seemed to hang in the air, ringing with an eerie sort of truth. I could feel the weight of them settling over me, prodding at the tangled knot of anger and grief I'd been grappling with for weeks now. Natalie spoke then, her voice barely above a hoarse whisper. She's right. What I did, it was the most selfish, unforgivable act. I threw away 22 years of love and commitment without a second thought. She lifted her gaze to mine, those green eyes I'd once loved so fiercely brimming with regret and sorrow. I don't expect forgiveness, Elijah. I don't deserve it. But I hope you can believe that the love I felt for you, the choice I made to be your partner every single day for over 2 decades, that was real. However fleeting, however much I tarnished it in the end. After that heart-wrenching Thanksgiving dinner, I figured Natalie would finally get the message loud and clear. Our marriage was over, done, finito. The love and trust had been shattered beyond repair, simple as that. So imagine my surprise when she called me up a few days later, sounding almost hopeful. In the end, it was Natalie who made the first overture towards a peaceful resolution. Maybe she sensed my resignation, my bone-deep weariness at the prospect of dragging this battle out any further. Or maybe she just wanted to take the reins one last time, to exert some semblance of control over the smoldering wreckage of our former life. Whatever her reasons, she instructed her lawyer to accept a 50-50 split of our assets and change the grounds for divorce to the ubiquitous, irreconcilable differences. No more fighting, no more accusations of infidelity or betrayal haunting the official record. Thanks for watching this video. If you like stories on our channel, please support us with the like button. Thank you.